In this video, I'm going to show you how Quickbid calculates your prices. Understanding this will help you set up Quickbid correctly and give you confidence that your quotes are accurate. At its core, Quickbid is doing three things: calculating your base costs, applying a profit overhead factor, and optionally applying markup to specific items. On top of those three things, Quickbid also calculates taxes and fees, freight and installation, and of course, all of it summed up in a grand total. Let me break down each piece. Your base cost is the foundation of every quote. It's made up of two things: materials and labor. Quickbid understands how cabinets are actually built. It knows what materials go where, what hardware is needed, what processes each piece goes through in your shop. You give it the basics and it calculates everything else. When you enter a cabinet section into Quickbid, you enter the minimum. You separate your orders by rooms and sections, and then for each, you specify your door style, material finish, and drawer box type. Then you enter the height, depth, and total length of the cabinets in that section, not each individual cabinet. You tell it how many doors, drawers, cabinet boxes, rollouts, and finished ends. That's it. For each cabinet group, indicate whether the interiors are standard, such as hard rock maple, or finished. For instance, a bookcase with wood and finish matching the doors would be classified as a finished interior. Quickbid takes that information and calculates every bit of material needed, all the time and labor costs, even factoring in the different wages for different employee types, and all the extra costs related to each job. All of it specific to your shop. Material costs. Quickbid figures out the square footage of every material. For boards like millimeter veneer, it calculates the number of sheets. For lumber like 4/4 or 8/4 lumber, it determines the board feet quantity. For edge banding, it calculates the number of rolls of edge banding required. It counts the hinges and drawer slides and any other hardware item you assign, such as dowel pins, etc. It knows which processes each product goes through in your shop and how long each one takes. Importantly, Quickbid uses your material prices, the actual cost from your suppliers, not generic numbers, and it factors in waste. If your shop typically wastes 30% on sheet goods, Quickbid accounts for that. Labor is where most estimating falls apart, but it's where Quickbid really shines. Other software can't accurately price your labor because every shop works differently. Here's how Quickbid does it. You define your shop's labor process. Things like CNC cutting, edge banding, assembly, sanding, finishing. For each process, you specify how long it takes and what hourly rate applies. Then you assign those processes to your products. That sounds like a lot of work, but Quickbid comes with pre-made templates for you, so you're not starting from scratch. Quickbid takes every part of the cabinets in your order and runs them through your predefined processes, calculates the time at your hourly rates, and gives you an exact labor cost, not an estimate. So your base cost equals your material cost plus your labor costs. This is your true cost to build the job, before overhead and profit. Now your base cost doesn't include all other expenses it takes to run your shop. Rent, insurance, utilities, equipment payments, office staff. These costs can't be assigned to any single job, but every job has to help pay for them. That's what the profit overhead factor does. It's a multiplier that covers two things: your overhead expenses and your desired profit margin. Let's say your profit overhead factor is 1.67. If a job has a base cost of $10,000, you multiply it by 1.67 to get 16,700. That extra 6,700 covers this job's share of overhead plus your profit. You might be wondering, what should my factor actually be? Quickbid includes a calculator to help you figure this out. The calculator needs three inputs. First, your annual overhead costs. Add up everything from the past year: rent, insurance, utilities, equipment, marketing, software, office salaries, all expenses that aren't tied to a specific job. Second, your annual direct costs. This is the total of all materials and labor you spent on actual jobs in the past year. Third, your desired profit percentage. The calculator divides your overhead by your direct cost to get what's called the overhead rate. Then it adds up your profit percentage to give you a calculated factor. For example, if your overhead is $150,000 and your direct costs were $120,000, your overhead rate is 1.25. Add 15% profit and your calculated factor is about 1.44. This gives you a starting point. You can adjust based on your market. Maybe you need to be more competitive, or maybe your market will bear higher prices. Quickbid gives you flexibility in how you apply this factor. You set a company default that applies to orders by default, but you can also assign different factors to specific customers. Maybe a contractor who brings you steady work gets a lower factor, and you can override the factor on any individual order if needed. The next piece is markup. This is an additional percentage you can apply to specific items and materials, separate from your profit overhead factor. Why would you use this? Let me give you a real example. Say you buy a new CNC that cuts your door production time in half. Without markup, your door prices would drop because your labor costs went down, but your customers were perfectly happy paying the old price. So you add markup to your doors to maintain your pricing, while pocketing the efficiency gains of extra profit. Or maybe you do specialty carved doors that customers perceive as high value. You can add markup to charge what the market will bear, independent of your actual costs. You can set markup on doors, door panels, and other door options such as door grain direction. You can also assign markup to drawer boxes, cabinet types, and items such as crown molding, hoods, etc. It's a strategic tool. Use it where customers see premium value. That's the core of cost calculation, but Quickbid also calculates taxes and fees. Let's break these down. Quickbid lets you configure these on a per order basis so your quotes include everything the customer will actually pay. First, you set your tax rate as a percentage. This might be your state sales tax or whatever rate applies in your area. You enter it once and Quickbid applies it to the items you specify. Now everything is taxable in every state and tax laws can change, so Quickbid gives you control over what gets taxed. You can toggle each of these on or off. Cabinet groups and items tax. This applies your tax rate to all cabinets and items in the Rooms tab. In most cases, you'll have this on. Installation tax. Set this based on your local requirements. Accessories and hardware tax. This applies to items in the accessories and hardware tab. Things like extra poles, knobs, or appliance panels that aren't part of the main cabinet order. Quickbid also lets you add a workers' compensation insurance as a fee. This is insurance required for labor, and many shops calculate as a percentage of labor costs. This is how Quickbid is designed as well. You set the percentage, say 10%, and toggle it on. Quickbid calculates the fee based on your total labor cost for that order, and adds it to your quote. All of these taxes and fees are totaled up and shown at the top of the page, so you can see exactly what's being added to the order. The last two components of your quote are installation and freight. These are separate from your cabinet pricing and give you the flexibility in how you charge for delivery and installation services. The Freight tab lets you calculate shipping costs based on distance and truck capacity. First, there's automatic distance calculation. You enter your shop's location by zip code and the customer's delivery zip code. And Quickbid uses Google Maps to calculate the distance in miles. This saves you from having to look it up manually for every order. Then you configure your freight settings. Max cabinet and items capacity per truck. How many cabinets and items can fit in one delivery trip? Freight cost per mile. Your cost to drive each mile. Any additional flat fee per delivery trip. Quickbid then calculates how many trips are required based on your order size, multiplies by the distance and your per mile cost as the flat fee, and gives you a total freight price. If you need to override this calculation, maybe the customer is picking up the order themselves, or you've negotiated a special delivery rate, you can toggle on a custom price and enter whatever amount you want. The installation tab is straightforward. You enter the installation price for this order manually. In the future, we may add a custom installation calculator, but for now, you just add in your price manually. Some shops don't do installation at all, they just deliver the cabinets. Others have their own installation crews, and some subcontract installation to third parties. Because installation pricing varies so much from shop to shop, Quickbid lets you simply enter the amount you'll charge. If installation isn't part of this order, you just leave it at 0, putting it all together. So here's the complete picture. Step 1. Quickbid calculates your base cost, materials plus labor, using your actual prices and your shop's specific processes. Step 2. It multiplies by your profit overhead factor to cover overhead and profit. Step 3. It applies any product-specific markup where you've set it. Step 4. It adds taxes and fees based on your settings. Step 5. It adds freight and installation costs. The result is your ultimate grand total, an accurate quote based on your real costs, your real overhead, your desired profit, all applicable taxes and fees, plus delivery and installation, calculated in minutes instead of hours. Now, if the project is still early in the design phase, dimensions aren't finalized, the customer is still deciding on styles or materials, then yes, the quote is an estimate, but that's not a limitation of Quickbid. That's just the nature of the project. Once those decisions are made, you re-enter the final specs and the Quickbid gives you the real price. You control how accurate it is based on how solid the information is. That's how Quickbid calculates your prices. In other videos, we'll show you exactly how to set up each of these pieces in the admin settings.